Right, welcome everyone. This is now session one of Revit Intermediate. I think you all know me by now, Russell. This, the longer name or the national code for this particular unit is the CPP BDN 5012A, produce and present 3D models of small scale building designs, so in short Revit Intermediate. Now again, there are external students that will be following my recordings. So external students, oh by the way, before we go on, so sessions are twice a week as we did with Revit Introduction. So Monday 10 till 1 p.m. Now note that we only go to 1 p.m, we don't go to 1:30. So it's 3 hours today and 3 hours Thursday. Thursday 1 till 4. Okay. Mainly because this unit there is a lot less nominal hours in this unit that there were in Revit Introduction. So we're only running 6 hours a week, not 7. Okay. External students, your lecturer is a person by the name of Andreas Vasilio. So if you are an external student and you're having any issues with the unit itself, obviously you'll be following my recordings, but Andreas will actually look after you. So he'll answer any inquiries and he'll also do the assessment marking, feedback marking and final results. So that's Andreas for externals. Now I think I believe there's probably only about 5 external students. And again, Andreas will get in touch with those students and just introduce himself today, hopefully. All right. So what we'll do is we'll just switch back now to Learn, and we'll just for students in the classroom. I'll actually now get you enrolled into the Learn page or site. Now the external students I have pre-enrolled. So the external students will probably see this particular unit come up on their dashboard already. So I've already done the externals. For people in class at the moment, if you can go to here, browse all courses. In the search box here, just do a search for Revit Intermediate. There should only be one search result that comes up, which is this one here. So follow that link, click the link, and when it asks you for the enrollment key, you're going to use this one here, the CRN 12981F. So this is for obviously for internal students here in the classroom today. All right, so that will take you to this site. Now, if we, I'll just sort of run through the site briefly, and I'll talk about the assessment requirements. So essentially, this unit follows on from Revit Introduction and builds on the skills that you've learnt there. And we'll have a look at the assessment task that you're about to undertake, so you get an idea of what you'll be working on throughout the next few weeks. We'll have a look at. We'll also have a look at the I guess the weekly schedule, and we'll have a look at the the assessment task and also the due date or the final date for the assessment task itself, the conclusion of the unit itself. So it's going to be, I guess, it's going to be It's going to go very quickly, this particular unit.
What's new?
Sorry?
What's new?
Yeah, they do go quickly. Yeah, given that we're doing it twice a week. So the usual software for home. So again, I think by now most people have got Revit installed at home. Yes, basically, well, external students, of course, and internal students as well. So there may be some requirement for students to do work at home if there's some sort of catch-up work. If you do miss a session or sessions, it is expected that you actually complete the required work at home before you actually physically attend the next session, so that you are caught up. That's quite important. There's a learning resource I'll just quickly have a look at. And there's a practice exercise that we're going to sort of have a look at this morning, so today and Thursday. So if we go to start here, so there's a brief introduction for the unit, Revit Intermediate here. Before you start, the unit descriptor and learning schedule. So we've got there's two learning schedules here. There was one that is being used by a class that started at the beginning of the semester. So for you people, you'll be looking at this one here that starts today, the 14th of October. And down here we've actually got the unit descriptor. So this is the for the national code for the unit itself. So if you want to have a look at the elements and performance criteria, you can do so through this document here. Having a look at the learning schedule. Now, we've because you are continuing students, I'm not going to go through all of this. I guess these processes or procedures here, because we've sort of covered them already. We've talked about software for home. So as I said, most students now have got the Revit installed at home. We are going to have a look at an exercise today, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, depending on how we go with the exercise, the exercise we're starting today will depend on when we actually start the assessment task. Now, note that the actual assessment task itself sort of comes in fairly quickly. So we might even conceivably start the assessment task next Monday. And I guess the way that this unit is designed is that the assessment task, once we start it, will take us through right to the end of the unit. So there's only one assessment task, which we're going to work on week by week or session by session, which will take us through to the very end of the unit. So that's what you'll be assessed on, is just one project. So if you have a look through the sessions, you'll sort of get an idea of what we're going to cover during each session, bearing in mind that it's all part of the assessment task. Now, going back here, the due date for the assessment task is Tuesday, December the 3rd. So conceivably, our last session, if we look through the program itself, our last session is actually Monday, the 2nd of December. Okay, so as I say, you know, we're halfway through October now, so that's going to go very quickly. But as I say, given the amount of work, I mean, as I said before, I guess the nominal hours against this unit are much less than Revit Introduction. But on the other hand, there is a lot more work in this unit than there was in Revit Introduction. Okay, So we're going to achieve a lot more, I guess, in relatively the same time. So once we start the assessment task, there's going to be a fair bit of work to do. Okay, and it is quite a substantial project that we're working on, and I'll talk about that shortly. So the final assessment due date is December the 3rd. As I say, it is important that if you do miss sessions, that you do actually watch the recordings and catch up, so that we're all at the same spot or place at the beginning of each session. It's quite important. So I'll let you have a look through the learning schedule at your leisure, but that'll give you an idea of what we're going to cover. Now today, and I guess normally with this unit, because sometimes there are students that will actually undertake Revit Introduction in a semester, in semester 2, but not actually do Revit Intermediate until semester 1 the following year. So there's quite a considerable gap between those two units. So what I tend to do is I actually sort of get students to do a warm-up exercise to get their Revit skills, or see where they are with their Revit skills before we sort of get into the, I guess, the main assessment for this unit, just to sort of get you back into the swing of things using Revit itself. Now, given that it's only been a few weeks, for you people, hopefully you won't have forgotten too much. Okay. So I'm going to skip this preliminary exercise, and today, when we get started, we're actually going to go in and have a look at here, project phasing in Revit, and just work through an exercise where I introduce the concept of phasing, and I'll talk about that later. So we're going to go straight into this exercise, which is I guess it's basically going to sort of give you an insight and some skills that you'll need in the initial stages of the assessment task itself. So that's what I'm planning to do today and for Thursday. Okay. So here on this page here, I've got the usual information regarding extensions. So basically, with extensions, of course, unless there's a very good reason, mainly sort of due to medical conditions, you can apply for an extension. Given that we're going into the end of the year, I guess it's going to be fairly tight once we sort of get into December. It's going to be, and given the, I guess, the volume of marking that I have to do with the with this particular assessment task, there's not going to be a lot of time for extensions. So I guess if you are having any issues during the unit, during the weeks, if you're falling behind, and again this applies to external students, please speak to me if you're one of my students, or speak to Andreas if you're one of his students, if you're having any issues, so that we can try and help you get through and meet the final deadline. Okay, but there is a formal process in place there if you do want to apply for an extension based on medical grounds. So just to make you aware that that information is there on the Learn site itself. This particular form needs to be completed if you are applying for an extension. But please talk to myself or Andreas before you actually do that. Now, a learning resource here is essentially this publication here. There's no requirement for students to actually purchase this learning resource. It's actually the book that we sort of used in Revit Introduction for a few of the exercises. It is a good reference generally, and it will obviously, if you have it, so some of you may have already bought this book, it's going to be useful to you for this particular unit as well. So it's just a suggested learning resource. Here, particularly chapters 13 to 16 that relate to documentation. So I'll run through the assessment task in a minute and sort of show you exactly what you're going to undertake. But I guess the work, or the nature of this unit is heavily related or centred around documentation, producing a document set based on a particular project. We'll have a look at practice exercises. We'll go into practice exercises shortly. Once we've had a look at the assessment task itself. Now, the assessment task is here in two parts. So it's completely open at the moment because I've got a class that's currently going through it, which are working through it over the whole semester. So you can actually have a look at the assessment task so far, but please don't start the assessments. This is more for the externals. Please don't start the assessment task until you do all the pre-learning. Okay. Now, the class, of course, these classes will be recorded, and I'm recording at the moment, obviously. So the class recordings are here. If you do have to have a look through, if you miss a class and you do have to work through a class recording, they are here. Now, there is a set of recordings that here, this is for my Monday night class. This is the semester class here. Now, I will, after today, I'll actually add a playlist in this area here, which will include today's recording and, of course, all the subsequent recordings over the coming weeks. So the thing is that this one here, I don't know, has anyone been looking at my recordings for Revit Introduction? Yeah. Okay, so the thing is that, yes, this is this playlist here will actually, for instance, not that you're going to look at the playlist for my Monday night class, but you can see there that we've got, I'm now up to 9 sessions. So as we run through the sessions for this particular class, the actual recordings will sort of build up here in a logical sequence. Okay, so if you do miss a class, it is expected that you actually work through the recording and catch up. So as I say, down in this area here, there will be a second playlist for these recordings. Okay. Now, the assessment task is sort of broken up into two parts. There's a modelling aspect to it, and there's also a documentation aspect to it. So we're going to, in the first instance, we're actually going to create a building. Now, the good news is that you don't have to draw the whole thing, okay? And it's based around a renovation and an extension to an existing building. So that's the project, that's the assessment task. And on screen is the completed building here. So what you'll do is you'll actually do all the modelling first, and then you'll set about to create 9 A3 sheets of documentation, construction documents. So it's going to give you some skills there, which will certainly assist you when you get to the other subjects, such as working drawings. And so working drawings is a more broader subject where you'll actually do essentially 3 of these tasks that we're about to do here in this unit. Working drawings is a subject that diploma students will do. Now, it may not be, you could possibly do working drawings in semester 1 2020 if you are a diploma student. We have it timetabled in for semester 2 for diploma students in 2020. So when you're doing your enrolments for next year, if you are a diploma student full time, you can perhaps do working drawings in semester 1 and the design subject in semester 2, or the other way around, design in semester 1 and working drawings in semester 2. Is anyone here doing certificate 4? A few of you? Yeah, so in semester 1 for certificate 4 students, you'll be doing a working drawings type set of units that are broken up into planning approval and building approval. So the two of those together equal the broader working drawing subject. So you'll do that in semester 1 next year, being full-time. Okay, so what we're about to do in this unit is going to give you some skills for those larger units. Now, what I'll do is I've got a Revit model of this that I'll just quickly load up, and I'll just show you essentially the basics of it, what you're about to do, and I guess just because it introduces a concept called phasing or timelining, which I'll talk about more when we actually go through the little practice exercise shortly. So just give me a moment and I'll load up this file. All right, so what we're looking at here at the moment is this is the completed building, the completed model that you will actually undertake. If I open up a 3D view, that's it there. Now, what happens here, or what you actually start with. Now, I said before it was actually a renovation and extension project. Over here, this is the add-on. This is the extension. So that's what you'll draw up. Okay. Here, this building here is the existing building. Okay. So you're going to start with the existing building, and you're going to do some demolition work inside it. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to demolish an existing building and then add an extension. Okay, so what I said before was, and it introduces this sort of concept or aspect of Revit that's called phasing or timelining. So what we do is we start with a building here that was built in the past. You know, it could have been built in 1975. So that's deemed the existing building, to which we demolish parts of it, we rebuild parts of it, so we actually put new walls, doors, and new walls, doors and windows inside the existing, and we also add this extension. So we're demolishing and rebuilding. So, and that's the existing, and this is the new. So we're breaking up the project into different what we call phases. So the past and the present. And Revit has quite a unique way of actually controlling that aspect of the build, which we'll have a look at in the practice exercise. So the practice exercise itself is designed to take us through the process in a much simpler form, so that you sort of get a grasp or an understanding of how Revit controls this particular build. Okay, so this is the project. Now, the good thing is that when we start the assessment task, you'll actually be given the existing building, so you don't have to draw that up. Okay, all you have to do basically is do some demolition, some rebuilding, and then add the extension. Okay, which I'll take you through. Okay, so you're going to, as I say, you're going to create a series of plan views based on this project, and I guess the plan views that you create again are in a timeline sequence. So, for instance, here we've got a plan view for the existing building, a plan view for proposed demolition, and a plan view here for the completed project, the rebuild and the extension added. So there's 3 plan views here that will, I guess, indicate the different sort of phases or timing of this particular build. So if we have a look here at the existing plan, that's essentially what you're going to start with. That's the existing building. That's the old building, yeah. As it was back in 1975 or whenever. So if we then go to the second plan here, the demolition plan, you'll see that the parts of the building that are marked in red are the parts of the building that will be demolished and removed. Okay. And then we go to the final plan here, and that is the completed project. So we've got internal changes here in the existing. So we've removed, we've rebuilt, and we've also added the this extension on, and a deck area at the back here with rainwater tanks and so forth. So to that end, you're going to complete a series of develop a series of floor plans, basically by copying and changing some parameters. You're going to create a series of elevations, of course, with full annotation. There's a couple of sections there. So a longer section through the building that way, and one running through this way. There will be some details. So there's a west wall detail, box gutter detail. So just picking up, I guess, where the existing building joins the new, and mainly just sort of picking up on the box gutter here that runs along to obviously take the water from the existing roof. Beyond that, there's door schedules, window schedules, some general notes, a general legend. Some of this is actually already done for you, so you don't have to do it all. And then we then come down and we develop a series of sheets. Okay, so at the final stage of this particular assessment task or project is the production of 9 individual sheets. So on the cover sheet, you'll actually create a nice perspective view. You'll put a sheet list here, the client name, the name of the project. You'll put together a site plan. The demolition plan, which we've had a quick look at, the floor plan, which we've had a quick look at, complete with a symbols legend, the elevations, the 2 sections, the 2 details, and a sheet that contains the site plan slightly modified to show shadow patterns at the different times of year during the solstices. And finally, a sheet that has the door and window schedules plus some general notes.
So do you include that in when you're doing a plan up? You normally include all of that?
Yeah, all that.
All that to a client. They need to have all that information. Do they? What door?
Yeah. So yeah, or yes. So this is the basics. So plus you might have to produce a bit more than this. Yeah. Now the thing is that this is this is. I guess we've tailored this particular assessment task to work within the nominal hours that we have for this unit. When you get to your bigger working drawing subjects, you might then create, the buildings become more complex, and so does the, I guess, the required views and the annotation and the information, because although, and I guess the thing is that there also comes into play compliance issues. So you may actually have to sort of note any sort of compliance issues. So with the working drawing subjects, yes, there is a bigger requirement for you in terms of producing working drawings. But this is a basic set. But yes, if you're going through and if you're applying for, I guess what we're looking at here is a set of drawings that would cover both planning and building approval. Okay, so the thing is that if you're producing a set of documents for planning approval, they don't have to be as detailed. So because you're just looking for planning permission, but when you actually then get your planning permission, you then have to obviously, go over your documents and produce more detailed documents for someone to build it. Okay, so then you go into your building approval and into the final stage then of building, giving these documents to a builder, and then going from there. And I guess the thing is that if you were building, if this depends whether you're going through a building company or you're doing these drawings, I guess, as a building designer, and then you're actually then sort of looking for a company or someone to actually do the building work yourself. So it will depend on which way you're going with this, but typically being a renovation and extension, this is something that you could undertake as as a building designer, builder or drafter, produce the documents, and then obviously the documents have to be submitted to council for both planning and building approval before you can go ahead. So it's I guess the unit itself is not really designed to take you through a comprehensive set of planning and building approval documents. This unit is basically designed to continue teaching you how to use Revit. It's still building up your core skills with Revit. But at the same time, we're going through quite a nice little project here that will give you an insight into what's required in terms of a document set. So providing you go through and you actually complete the set of documents as per my examples and everything is correct, then you'll get a pass. Okay, and I will provide you with a set of PDF documents that you can work towards. So as long as your sheets look like mine, then I'm happy and you'll get a pass for the unit itself. Okay. And as you're probably well aware now, I'm very, very fussy. Okay, I have a very high standard and I expect that you will meet that standard as well. Okay, because at the end of the day, if you make mistakes with any of this, those mistakes can be catastrophic. So, if you're doing this in real life, you want to make sure that all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed and everything is squeaky clean. Okay, to make sure that you are covered, for both, building and also for the client. So that's the assessment task. That's the only assessment task, and this is what you'll be assessed on. All right. So this particular project. So as I say, conceivably we could actually start this or begin this this time next week. Depends how we go with this first exercise. So I'll just close this for the moment. Reduce this. So we're going now to practice exercises. So before we do, are there any questions at this stage?
On the old, from the last term, are they still on YouTube?
The recordings?
Yeah. Just need to go back and check something, or?
Well, the recordings, I've got a current set of recordings from my Monday night class that, basically it's the same assessment, it's the same thing that we're going through. I'd prefer if you didn't sort of go ahead too far with it.
Yeah, but can we refer to the stuff we did last semester?
Oh yes, of course. Yes. Oh yes, of course. Oh yes. You still have access to the Revit introduction, so you can still refer to those recordings from Revit introduction. All right. So we're going to let's go straight to practice exercises now, and the practice exercise that we're about to have a look at introduces what we call project phasing in Revit, which is what the assessment task is based on. What we call phasing or timelining, which is essentially in a renovation and extension project. We start with an existing building, which obviously was built in the past. And in the present, we're actually doing demolition work on it. We're making changes to it, and we're rebuilding it, and we're adding to it. Okay, so that's the present. So essentially, we've got two sort of distinct time periods for the build itself. And through this exercise, we'll sort of see how Revit controls that process. Now, what I've got here is a document called Phases, an overview of Revit phases. I'll perhaps come back to that. What I would like you to do, if we just go to, I'm calling this exercise 2 because, as I said, normally what we do with this unit is we get students to do the first exercise as a warm-up, but the first exercise essentially is hidden at the moment because I don't think you people need to do it. Essentially, the first exercise was the final exam in Revit Introduction. Remember that house you did for your final exam? That's exercise 1. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go into this one here, exercise 2. Now, if you can just open up this document here, which is the procedure document exercise, phasing principles. So it's an exercise I put together which sort of runs through the principles of phasing, and it's going to sort of be a little mini version of the main assessment task. So, as I said, with phases in Revit, what are they? Well, here in the first paragraph, they are time periods or milestones within the life of the project. They can represent either the time period itself or the status of the project at a specified point in time. So there must always be at least one phase in a project. By default, a new project in Revit comes with 2, namely existing and new construction. And I guess you can rename these phases and call them anything you like. You can actually add phases to a project as well, but the 2 phases that Revit provides in the standard template are more than enough for what we want to do. And I guess here, when would you use phases? Well, the first line here, or the first example, is exactly what we're about to do. You're refurbishing a building or extending, so consequently you need to show the building before and after the refurbishment takes place. Okay. The second example there, you need to show a development that is to be delivered in phases. Consequently, you need a sequence of drawings to represent the project at every distinct phase. Sometimes in commercial builds, a large building may not be built all at once. Because it's so large, it actually may be built in stages. So the builder may undertake stage 1. Okay, that gets completed. Maybe 5 years later, then stage 2 is commenced. 5 years after that, you then might then have stage 3. So if it's 3 stages, I mean stages 1 and 2 exist in the past. Okay, or if it's if stage 1 is completed and you're going to stage 2, then stage 1 is the existing, stage 2 is the current. When you go to stage 3, obviously the first 2 stages exist in the past. So with Revit, you can actually sequence those and nominate the existing buildings or the previously built buildings as existing. And Revit treats them differently to anything that is current. And we'll have a look and see how that works when we sort of have a look at this practice exercise. So here, the most common use of phases is the classic before and after, or existing and proposed. So scenarios, for example, you want to show the existing building as it is now and how it is proposed to be when you have finished work on it. Now the thing is that I think some of you are doing AutoCAD. Yeah. Now I guess when we have a look at the practice exercise and the assessment task, I guess if you are using AutoCAD, you'll have an appreciation of how intuitive and how clever this software is, being Revit, in controlling this process and in controlling the documentation in particular. Because if you're using an AutoCAD program, for instance, and you're having to manually draw the existing building and copy that plan to produce the demolition plan and copy that to then produce the final build or the final plan, there's a lot of duplication. Now with Revit, we use one model. We just use one model and Revit controls the process. Okay, so it'll give you a view that shows you the existing, it'll give you another view that shows you the demolition, and a final view that shows you the completed project, which is what we just had a look at. But it's all based on one model. It's not a duplication process. And that's essentially what we're saying here. Okay. So the whole ethos behind building information modelling, where Revit is used, is to have as little duplication of data as possible. If there's only one model, then you have eradicated the possibility for someone to be working on an out-of-date version. Okay. So what we're going to do, or what I propose we do, is we start a new project and we draw up what we deem to be the existing building in this practice exercise. And that's what you're going to do now. So I guess this exercise is going to do 2 things. It's actually going to give you a bit of a warm-up, Okay, see how your skills are with Revit after a few weeks. If you haven't looked at Revit, and also to demonstrate how Revit controls phasing or timelining as a prelude to the assessment task, which is based on that as well. So what I'd like you to do is to start a new project, and I've got a bit of a step-by-step here. So the process that I followed here is very similar to my former, I guess, exercises and assessment tasks. But essentially what you're going to do is draw up this existing building plan. So I'll let you start that now. And if you can just, obviously once you've drawn up the little building, it's not that complex, it's only a rectangular building with a standard roof and floor and some basic windows and doors. So when you've got to this stage, I'll get you to stop and then I'll direct you from there. So once we've got the existing building drawn, then we'll have a look at the process of phasing and how it all works, how we set it up in this exercise and the assessment task itself. So make a start on that. That shouldn't take you too long. Just add your dimensions like so to make sure that you've got all your building set out correct, your walls are in the right place. I'm not too fussed about door and window positions, although I have dimensions there for the windows and doors, external. The roof itself is the generic 125 with a pitch of 22.5 degrees. You can add fascia and gutters. It's a 600mm eave overhang. Note that the walls themselves are 250 brick veneer, so there's no requirement for you to create custom wall types. There's no requirement for you to create custom door or windows. It's all fairly standard. And underneath you'll put a generic 150 floor, which extends to the outside of the walls themselves. Okay, so note you don't have to put any of this annotation on. Okay, there's no annotation required apart from the dimensions. So that's for the floor plan and the elevation. So okay, so the annotation there is just purely for your information for the required specifications. All right, so we'll just pause for a moment. I'll let you work through that initial exercise. Okay, so we've got our building drawn up now. So again, this is going to be deemed the existing building. So if we go back to our exercise document, so in part 6, project setup for phasing, 6.1, review current phase conditions. In the project browser under floor plans, double click floor level. Now, as we've previously said, when you start or create a new project, there are two phases that exist called existing and new construction. As you add new elements to the building model, they are assigned to the new construction phase by default. This phase assignment is controlled by a setting within the view properties. You can control the default phases and view phase settings by changing the settings within a template. If you change the view property settings and the phase definitions within a template file, the new building model elements are assigned to a phase according to those settings. Now, what that is referring to don't worry too much about the template aspects of it. But if you go to the Manage tab, just click on the Manage tab, and then go to this the phasing button here. So Manage and Phasing. I'll just get you to open up a dialog called Phasing. So this is the area within Revit where phasing is controlled and managed. Okay, so on the first tab here under Project Phases, you can see the two phases that paragraph was referring to: existing and new construction. Now you can see up the top here it says past, and at the bottom it says future. Okay, so obviously existing comes before new in a logical timeline. Now I'll talk about phase filters and graphic overrides a little later, but I guess initially we just have to appreciate that we've got two phases in our current project that have come through from the template itself. Now you can insert phases both before and after the currently highlighted one. Now, as I said previously, we don't need to do that because the two phases we've got are sufficient for what we need to achieve. Now, you can rename these. So existing could be called before, and new construction could be renamed to after. Okay, so you can really call them whatever you like as long as you keep track of them. But for our purposes, we're not going to rename them, we're just going to keep them the way they are. So we'll close that for the moment. Now in that paragraph before, it says, as you add new elements to the building model, they are assigned to the new construction phase. Now let's have a look at that. So you've just drawn this building up, and you haven't worried about too much at all really, apart from the fact that it needs to be drawn accurately in the floor level view. Now if you select one of the walls, okay, select a wall, and in the properties, I'll just draw that out, in the properties, so this is a brick veneer 250 timber wall. In the properties, if you have a look at the very end of the properties of that particular wall, you've got an area there called phasing. Can you all see that? Down here. Just move that up. So phasing here. Now, we've got two settings there. One is phase created and one is phase demolished. Now, next to phase created, it's reading what? New construction. So at the moment, Revit is, I guess depicting or indicating that this particular wall was created in the new construction phase. So therefore, it's really the present, isn't it? Now, if I deselect that, we go back to the properties of the view itself, okay? So deselect the wall and we're back to the properties of the view itself. Now, if you scroll down to the end of the properties of the view, what do you see?
Phase filter.
Well, there's another set of phasing controls, isn't there? So there's a phase filter, and there's also a setting called phase. It's the phase that I'm interested in at the moment. So the view is assigned a phase, and by default it's set to new construction. Now when you add or draw up a building, when you add building components to the view like this, or a view, the building components take on the phase of the view itself. That's how the phase is allocated to the building elements. So whatever this is set to, okay, whatever the view is set to, as far as the phase is concerned, when you add a building element to the view itself, it then gets allocated to that phase. Okay, so remember we only have two phases in the project, existing and new. Now, if this is a new build, okay, we're not really worried about phasing. We're not worried about timelining because it's all completely brand new. And you don't have to worry about phasing as such, okay? You know that the floor plan is set to new construction. That's the view phase. So when you add building elements to it, they take on that phase, okay? So it's really, you don't really have to consider it. But when you're dealing with an existing building, okay, a building that existed in the past, that was built in the past, okay, and you're going to do something do something to it in the present, then you have to actually then manage that into two different time periods. And the thing, as I said, in this exercise and in the assessment task, this particular building is going to be deemed the existing. Okay, we're going to say, okay, well, this was built in the past. It's not the present. So essentially what we have to do is we have to send it back in time, back to the future, okay? So to send it back in time, okay, from the present to a time before today, we have to make a change to it. And essentially what we have to do is that we have to select all of the building elements and change their phase created to a phase that existed before the current. So we've got two phases in the project, haven't we? We've got new construction, and what was the other one?
Old.
Existing. Okay. So if we were to change the phase, which we can do, we can actually change the phase of an object. We can change it to another phase. And when we do, so in the list there, we've got new and existing. Okay. So the wall that I've selected, we can actually send that back in time by changing its phase created to existing. Okay. So that in a sense is actually sending that particular wall back in time. It's actually putting it into a previous phase.
So we do that with the whole house?
We do it with the whole house, yes.
So
yeah.
Okay.
So rather than doing it here for one wall, okay, so I'm just sort of drawing your attention to here, this one here, phase created, existing and new. It's currently in the new construction phase. We're going to select the entire building and then send it back in time by allocating or assigning the existing phase as the phase created. So I'm just going to clear that selection, escape a couple of times. Now, if you are going to change the phase of an entire building, of course, you may not be able to see all of the building elements in a floor plan. So the best approach here is to actually switch to a view where you can see all of the building elements. And normally that's a 3D view. Okay, so if you switch to a 3D view, and essentially what you're going to do is actually select the entire building with a selection window, and with the building selected, you've still got your phasing settings here. You haven't got any other settings because it's a combination of building elements that you've selected. So under phasing, for phase created, we change the phase created from the present or the current to a time in the past which is existing. So we change the phase created to existing. Okay, now if you click away, just click away into a free area here and deselect, we've now essentially sent this building back in time. Okay, is that okay with everyone? Yep, okay. Now, we're going to go back to our floor plan, and I want you to sort of note the change that's happened. So just reopen your floor plan. So you can see that we've got solid black walls, and we've lost the dashed line of the roof. Okay, that's normal. So you can see the appearance of our building has now changed. All right, and it's changed because this is now designated or deemed the existing building, so it's sent back in time. If we were to draw a new wall in this building, what do you expect that wall will look like? I'll get you to do it. We'll delete it afterwards, but just draw a wall in, a new wall, an internal wall. It looks normal, doesn't it? It's not solid black. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to select the new wall that you've drawn, just click on it and tell me what phase it was created in.
New construction.
New construction. Why?
Because we're going to be
Because the
building
view's
another
in
one's
new
old.
construction.
Yes, because the view, the current view, its phase is still new construction. Okay? If you clear that selection and you select one of the black solid walls, what phase was it created in? Existing. Okay? So you've got the black solid walls created in the past, and you've got this one created right now in the present. Okay? And the thing is that we're talking about a difference in appearance of the existing, which is achieved by something called a graphic override. So the phase of the view is the present. Okay. Now, if we have existing objects in the current view that are in the past, what Revit does is it changes their appearance to say or to show us that they are existing and this is new. So it's giving us that sort of distinction between old and new automatically. If I was to select one of these walls here and change the phase created to the present, what would happen to it?
It would go back to you.
It'd go back to normal. Okay? See the detail that comes back? So the thing is that in any view, if the phase created of the object is the same as the phase of the view, then everything appears normal. There's no override applied. Okay? So as soon as I change that back to existing, send it back in time, Revit changes the appearance of it.
So this is the same as your SketchUp too, where you have all your layers. So that you can go from one to the other.
Possibly a similar concept, yeah.
As in, like, you can just go quickly from one to the other one.
Yeah, yeah. Similar concept. Okay. So let's delete this, this new wall. So take that one out. What I'll get you to do now is, and we'll just go back to the procedure document. We've gone to 6.2 now, so change the phase of existing building model elements. So we've actually done that. We've actually switched to a 3D view, selected the building, and changed the phase created from new to existing. Okay, we've sent it back in time. Okay, and we've had a look at the floor plan, and we've noted that the walls are now solid black rather than black lines. Now, because this is a renovation project, it requires a plan view for demolition and one for new construction. So after you create these additional plan views, we modify their properties to make each view phase specific. So that's what we're about to do. We're about to actually create phase specific views, namely floor plans. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to make a copy of the current floor level view, and the copy, once you've made it, and it's going to be click duplicate view and duplicate, and then when you get a new view called copy of floor level, you're going to rename that and call it plan-existing. Okay, so you're making a copy of this one, and ultimately you're going to rename it to this. So duplicate view and duplicate. The copy you're going to rename plan-existing. Now, once you've done that, you're then going to make a second copy, or you're going to make a copy of plan existing. Okay, so right mouse, duplicate view and duplicate. And the copy here, you're going to rename and call plan-demo. So short for demolition. So essentially now you've got two copies of the floor level floor plan, one called plan existing and one called plan demo. Oh, is that okay with everyone? Now, in here, 6.3, step 7, okay, in the project browser under floor plans, double-click plan existing. So go back to plan existing, and in the properties, under phasing, for phase, select existing. So we're going back to the existing floor plan. Okay, plan existing. Go down to the phasing area down here, and we're changing the phase. So when we change the phase here, what are we changing the phase of?
The view.
The view, yes. So we're changing the phase of the view from new to existing. So what that does is that it actually brings our view back to look normal. Okay, so it lifts the override. Now, that's because in this existing plan, the phase is set to existing, and if we select one of the walls, the phase of it is set to existing as well. So again, if the phase created of the object is the same as the phase of the view, then everything appears normal. Okay? And essentially what we're looking at now is the existing building when it was brand new back in 1975. Okay? Because this existing building was a new build at one point in time. Okay? So we're just making it look normal again. Now, if you go back to or if you open up the plan demo floor plan, okay, so go back to the plan demo. Notice that the line pattern is still solid black. Okay. This view uses a different line style because the phase property of this view is set to new construction. So in a logical timeline, new construction occurs after existing, to which all the building model elements belong. Because of this time relationship, a graphic override is used to make older elements use the black solid line style. So it's this particular floor plan that we're going to use for the indication of items to be demolished. Okay, so this is our demolition plan. Now, before we have a look or consider demolition, we're just going to have a look or go back to the phasing dialog box, and we're going to sort of have a look at this tab here, which is graphic overrides. So again, from the Manage tab, go to Phasing and Phases, and just open up the Phasing dialog, and then click on Graphic Overrides. Now you can see here that we've got the phase status over here on the left. We've got existing, demolished, new and temporary. So these are for what we call phase status. Now you can see that anything that is deemed existing, which is the walls here, when they're cut, which they are through here, they're cut through here, they're going to have a pattern of solid black. Now the thing is that, you can, if you're doing this for yourself, you can change these settings to whatever you like. Okay, for instance, if I click on this little swatch here, and I change the colour, the solid colour here, the colour here, to dark blue, not that we're going to, and click OK, and OK, and apply, it changes the wall appearance to blue. Okay, so you can really do what you like here. change that back to black. If we tick halftone, it then goes to a black halftone. Okay. What we are going to do, however, so if you can appreciate that these settings through here, line patterns for projection and cut, will determine the appearance of objects that are deemed existing. What we are going to do is click on this little swatch here, and all we're going to do is actually untick visible. So in other words, we're going to turn off the solid fill. So foreground, untick visible. And yes, OK, and OK. All right, so it's still the demolition plan, and it still doesn't have a lot of detail in the walls, but obviously there is still a graphic override applied, in that we've removed the black solid fill, and we've just got black outlines, which is what we're going to work with. So we're going to work with this plan now, and we're going to set up, we're actually going to demolish parts of the building. So what we've just done is covered here in step 3 and 4. We're now going to have a look at, in part 7, demolish building model elements. And believe it or not, Revit has a tool for demolition called the demolish tool, and its icon is a sledgehammer. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute, but just here in step 1, if you're not already in the plan demo view, just open that view. In the properties palette under phasing, change the phase filter to show previous and demo. And I'll talk more about phase filters a little bit later, but the thing is that when you are setting up views, and depending on what you want to show, you have to sort of manipulate a combination of the phase of the view plus something called a phase filter. Now for the demolition view, we need to change this to show previous and demo. Okay, so just to get the view presenting correctly. So we're talking about the properties of the view. So scroll down to the phasing area and change the filter here to show from show all to show previous and demo, this one here. Okay, now I'm just going to, I'll just redock that, I'll put that back. Now we're now ready to have a look at actually demolishing parts of the building itself. Now we'll come back to this shortly, but if we go back, if we go to the next page here, this is the demolition plan. So in the plan below, all building components denoted with red dashed lines are to be demolished. Now, I guess you'll notice that in some cases we're actually taking out entire walls, here and here. In other cases we're actually taking out a part wall, see here, and also here on the eastern side, this part wall here. So we're opening up the building for the purpose of adding an extension. So before we actually demolish anything, we need to actually establish, I guess, a break point through the wall here at 3 meters, and a break point through the wall here and through here. Okay, the break point through the corner here should occur normally, and we don't have to really do too much there, but we do have to make a split through here. So it's going to be a split through here and a split through here. So the way we're going to set this up is with a combination of reference planes and dimensions. Because it has to be done accurately, we're going to add a couple of reference planes, one through the wall here and one through the wall here. Now what I suggest for the moment is just to make this a little bit easier, can you just turn off the roof, okay, just through the underlay settings, so just change the underlay to none, just initially. And what I'll get you to do is, from the Architecture tab, Work Plane panel, can you draw a couple of reference planes? So reference plane over here. Okay, just a short one through here and a short one through here. Now, with the first reference plane here, can I get you to add a dimension, an align dimension, from the wall here, the outside wall here, to the reference plane, like so. Now the reference plane over here, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to use the Align tool, select this part of the wall here as the reference, and move the reference plane up to it. Okay, so the reference plane is sitting along this wall face here.
Can you do that again?
Yep. Now, what you'll need to also do, now this first reference plane here needs to be exactly 3 meters from this wall face here. Okay, 3 meters. So to achieve that, you need to select the reference plane. Now, so to move the reference plane, you need to select it. Now, to select it, now you can see that when I put my mouse pointer over the top of it, it's actually saying generic floor 150. So what you'll need to do to select the reference plane itself, you'll need to hit the tab key here and then click. See how it's now pre-selecting reference plane, and click. That will activate this dimension. So you click on the dimension itself and then type 3000. Because we want to move that reference plane to it exactly 3 meters from the left-hand side there. And escape. Okay, I've noticed that some of you have thick lines on. Okay, when you're doing this, I would strongly suggest that you actually turn thick lines off. It would make life a lot easier. So it's very difficult to work with thick lines like that. So just turn it off. So we've got our reference plane here at 3 metres. We've got this one aligned here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to split this wall into 2 parts. And the objective is to actually have the split occur exactly on this reference plane. Okay? Now in the instructions here, if we go back a page, referring to the walls that display as dashed lines in the demolition plan next page, select the interior walls one at a time. Some interior walls will have to be divided, split, because only part of the wall length is to be removed. Use the split with gap tool, okay, this one, on the modify panel. Okay, split with gap, no, it's split with gap, not split, okay? So note that we've got split element and split with gap, okay? This is the one we're using. So the way this works is that we place the split near the reference plane like so, and also here on the exterior wall, just place it below the reference plane. So we've got 2 split with gaps. Now, again, what we're doing here, okay, you will be required to do this in the assessment task, okay, exactly what we're doing here. So using reference planes, putting dimensions against the reference planes, and using the split with gap to split walls. So what we do here is select one of the split walls. Notice there's a padlock here. Okay, note the padlock. You'll need to click on the padlock to unlock it. Okay, so in each case, it depends which wall you click on. When the gap is unlocked, the padlock will disappear. Okay, so do it to this one, and then move across to this one, and select either wall, and unlock the padlock. Okay, the padlock itself is actually locking the gap between the walls, so you need to unlock it. Okay. Okay, now with the gap itself unlocked, it just means that we can actually click on either of these walls and move them to increase the gap. Okay, so the gap is variable now. What we do, or what we are about to do, is actually use the align tool to actually bring this wall here back to the reference plane, the end of the wall, and then bring the end of this wall to this reference plane as well. So the split occurs exactly on the reference plane. So using the align tool, we select the reference plane first,
I can't split this wall.
and then select the end of the wall here, which takes the end of the wall to the reference plane. Okay, so we've now aligned the end of this wall to the reference plane. Using the align tool, select the reference plane again and select the end of this wall, and then having done that, hit escape a couple of times, and you've now got those 2 part walls occurring on that reference plane. Once you've taken care of these walls, you can then do the same with the split here. So again, this wall, the end of this wall has to come up to this reference plane, and the end of this wall has to come up to the reference plane as well. So align, select the reference plane first, select the end of the wall, select the reference plane again, select the end of this wall. So the sequence is important, okay, so that you don't overlap. So you've got to do the closest wall first, and then this wall second. Now with the wall split now, if you select this wall here, just make sure, or just check to see that you've actually, see how the wall is actually split through here. We haven't physically split it, but note the join order. See how this, the wall here is solid and it stops here. No, we haven't done anything with this. We're just sort of having a look at the relationship between this wall and this wall. Okay, if you select that split wall, yeah, just make sure that it looks like mine.
No, mine doesn't. No.
Okay, it may look like this. Let me see.
My select goes all the way.
Yeah, so it might look like that.
Yep.
Okay, if it does, okay, so select the wall, come up to the geometry panel and select wall joins up here. Okay, wall joins.
Yep.
Go back to the wall join itself and you'll see the square appear around the join. So left click. Up on the options bar, next to configuration, you've got previous and next. Just click the next button and it changes the join order of those two walls. So the idea is that we want to change the join order so that this line is running through here horizontally. Okay, so once you've done that, just hit the escape key a couple of times. When you select the wall again, you'll have that situation there. Okay, so we've changed the join order. Okay, now we're almost ready to demolish, but what you'll need to do now is that there's no need to keep the reference planes once we split the walls. So can you just select them, and you'll have to tab this one, so tab, click and delete. Select this reference plane and delete. So the reference plane, when you delete the reference plane with the dimension, it takes the dimension away as well. Now, if you have a look at the exercise document, going to page 8, you can now see obviously the walls and the doors and windows that are in the red dashed are the items to be demolished. So the way we demolish objects with Revit is, again, on the Modify tab, Geometry panel, you've got the sledgehammer here, which is Demolish. Okay. Demolish. Now, essentially, all you do here is select the tool and whatever you want to demolish, you left click.
I wish it was that simple alone.
Okay, no hard hat required here. All right. So, and the thing is that if you are demolishing a wall that contains a door, you don't need to actually click on the door separately. You just click the wall
It'll take it out.
and Revit takes the door with it. Okay? It knows obviously that you can't keep you can't take the wall away and leave the door frame there. So essentially it's a very quick process. You just click the objects that you want to demolish. Okay? This wall, in this case this door, the wall here, the part wall here, and there's just one window up here that needs to be demolished, this one here, and that's it for the moment. So if you just demolish those few walls, those few items. Sorry, it's nearly 1 o'clock, so we're going to finish very soon. But just before we finish, we'll actually continue this exercise on Thursday. So please make sure you hang on to this file because there is a bit more to do, obviously. So just before we wrap up today, just go back to your existing floor plan and have a look. Plan existing.
Yep.
So apart from a couple of splits in the wall, nothing else has changed here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this all looks as it was, apart from the wall splits. We go to plan demo, and we've got another floor plan, which indicates the building objects to be demolished.
Just out of curiosity, when we click on, next to the door, on the bottom one, where you've demolished the bottom wall, yep. Now over, to the left,
This one?
That wall on ours is not all red. That little corner piece that connects to the doorway is blue still.
There.
Yep, there.
That one there.
Is blue.
So in my case, so that's the wall to be demolished.
Yep.
This wall is staying.
Oh, we didn't bring that back. Okay, we have to align that.
If you've got, it might be a situation where you actually have to just change the wall join order.
Yeah, like I did before.
Like that. So you might actually have it looking like that. Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, you'll just have to use your wall joins. Select the join here. Click, and then just change or click next.
Like we did before.
Like you did before. So just that part of the wall is being demolished. Okay. This part is being kept. And the door is being demolished, just the door itself.
Oh, yes,
yeah. So this wall is being kept. Okay. All right. Well, that's as far as I'd like to go today. We're at time. So as I say, just save this little exercise file and just bring it with you on Thursday, and we'll continue this exercise Thursday. So from here, we're going to create another floor plan for the rebuilding process. Okay. All right, good. So that's session 1. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
See you Thursday.